Somewhere in the sun-scorched heart of West Africa, in the 14th century, there lived a king so wealthy that historians still cannot calculate the true size of his fortune. He did not rule an empire of oil or steel or silicon. He ruled an empire of gold, literal mountains of it, mined from riverbeds his own subjects were forbidden to fully map, lest the secret of its abundance escape his borders. When this man finally left his kingdom on a journey to the holy city of Mecca, he did something no billionaire in modern history has ever dared to do. He gave so much gold away to so many strangers in one single city that he single-handedly collapsed that region's economy for over a decade. Gold lost its value. Prices spiraled. Traders across 3 continents rewrote their maps to mark the location of his kingdom, because until that year, most of the known world did not even believe a civilization like his existed. His name was Mansa Musa, and by the time modern economists tried, centuries later, to translate his fortune into today's dollars, the number they arrived at broke the scale they were using. This is the story of the richest person who ever lived, and the empire of gold and salt that made it possible. The story of the richest man in human history does not begin with him. It begins nearly a century earlier, on a dusty battlefield in the West African savannah, where a prince who had been mocked his entire childhood as the ugly one, a boy exiled and hunted, returned from years in the wilderness to challenge a tyrant. His name was Sundiata Keita, and the empire he built from the ashes of that rebellion, the Mali Empire, would become the foundation upon which his descendant generations later would build one of the greatest fortunes the world has ever recorded. Mali did not become wealthy through conquest alone. It became wealthy because of geography, and because of 2 substances that the medieval world could not live without: gold and salt. In the forests south of the Niger River, in regions the empire's rulers never fully disclosed even to their own inner circle, gold was mined in staggering quantities. Historians estimate that for centuries, roughly half of the Old World's gold supply, the gold circulating through Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, originated from this single region of West Africa. And yet, almost nobody outside of Africa knew exactly where it came from. Muslim traders who crossed the Sahara to buy it were kept deliberately ignorant of the mining sites. The rulers of Mali understood something that modern economists would later formalize into theory. Scarcity and controlled information create value. But gold alone was not enough to build an empire. In the scorching interior of West Africa, another commodity was worth its weight in gold, quite literally salt. Mined from vast deposits in the Sahara, at places like Tagaza, slabs of salt were essential for preserving food and for basic survival in the brutal heat. Caravans of camels, sometimes numbering in the thousands, made the perilous journey across the desert, carrying salt south and gold north. Mali sat directly on this trade route, and it taxed nearly everything that passed through its territory. This was the empire's true engine of wealth. Not war, not plunder, but control of trade itself. By the early 14th century, Mali was already recognized by its neighbors as an extraordinary regional power. It stretched across a territory larger than Western Europe, incorporating hundreds of cities, a professional standing army, and a sophisticated administrative bureaucracy. Its capital regions and trading cities, including the famous city of Timbuktu, functioned as bustling hubs where Berber traders from North Africa mingled with scholars, craftsmen, and merchants from across the African interior. Islam had spread into the region generations earlier, brought by traders along these same caravan routes. And by the time our central figure was born, Mali's ruling class had blended West African political traditions with Islamic scholarship, law, and diplomacy. Into this empire, sometime around the year 1280, a boy was born named Musa Keita. Little is recorded of his early life. The surviving sources, mostly written by Arab historians decades after his most famous exploits, focus almost entirely on the events that made him legendary. What we do know is that Musa was not originally destined for the throne. Mali's succession customs at the time allowed a reigning ruler to appoint a deputy to govern in his absence, and it was through one such appointment that Musa's path to power began. The ruler before him, Abu Bakr II, was, according to the chronicles, a man consumed by a singular obsession: the edge of the world. Arab historian Al-Amari, drawing on conversations with Musa himself years later, recorded an extraordinary claim. Abu Bakr II reportedly became fixated on discovering what lay beyond the Atlantic Ocean. He is said to have organized a massive fleet. Some accounts claim as many as 2,000 vessels, stocked with men, gold, and provisions, and sent them westward into the ocean to find the far shore. According to the story Musa later told, only a single ship returned, its captain reporting that the fleet had encountered a powerful whirlpool-like current in the middle of the ocean and was lost. Undeterred, Abu Bakr II is said to have organized an even larger second expedition. This time, he sailed with it himself, leaving Musa as his regent to govern the empire in his absence. He was never seen again. Whether this account is historical fact, court legend, or a diplomatic story designed to explain a succession, remains one of the most debated questions in African history. Some modern researchers have speculated, controversially, that Abu Bakr II's fleet may have reached the Americas over a century before Columbus, citing later Spanish accounts of encountering West African artifacts and even oral traditions among some indigenous communities. Mainstream historians remain deeply skeptical, noting the lack of solid archaeological evidence. But whatever the truth of that lost fleet, its practical consequence for our story is undeniable. Abu Bakr II never returned, and the regent he left behind, Musa Keita, ascended to become Mansa Emperor of Mali, inheriting not just a throne, but access to the richest gold-producing region on earth. Musa's early reign was a continuation and expansion of his empire's power. He extended Mali's borders through a combination of military campaigns and diplomatic alliances, absorbing the wealthy trading city of Gao and securing dominance over crucial trans-Saharan routes. Under his rule, Mali's territory swelled to encompass modern-day Mauritania, Senegal, Mali, Niger, Guinea, and parts of several other present-day nations. He administered this vast domain through provincial governors, maintained standing military garrisons at key points along the trade routes, and by most contemporary accounts, presided over a period of internal stability and prosperity that allowed commerce to flourish unimpeded. It was this foundation, control over roughly half the Old World's gold supply, dominance of the salt trade, a vast and stable territory, and a sophisticated administrative system capable of mobilizing enormous resources, that set the stage for the event that would make Mansa Musa a legend not just in Africa, but across the medieval world. In the year 1324, Mansa Musa announced his intention to undertake the Hajj, the Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca that every able Muslim is obligated to complete at least once. For most pilgrims, this was a modest, often perilous journey. For Mansa Musa, it would become one of the most consequential displays of wealth in recorded human history, a journey that would ripple through the economies of an entire region and permanently etch the name of Mali onto the maps of the known world. As he prepared to depart, Musa assembled what would become one of the largest and most opulent traveling caravans ever documented. Contemporary Arab chroniclers, writing in the decades that followed, struggled to agree on exact numbers, but the estimates alone are staggering. Tens of thousands of people are said to have accompanied him. Soldiers, officials, scholars, merchants, and enslaved attendants, though the exact composition and treatment of those traveling with him remains a subject that modern historians examine with appropriate care, avoiding the romanticized framing of older accounts. Hundreds of camels carried the caravan's supplies. And at the center of it all, according to the chronicles, was gold, an almost unimaginable quantity of it, carried specifically to be distributed, spent, and gifted along the way. He was not traveling merely to fulfill a religious obligation. He was traveling as the ruler of one of the wealthiest empires on the planet, and he intended for the entire Islamic world to know it. What happened next, as his caravan crossed the Sahara and arrived in Cairo, would become one of the most extraordinary economic events of the medieval era, and it is where our story continues in part 2. As his caravan vanished into the northern horizon, Mansa Musa carried with him more than gold. He carried the reputation of an entire continent. What awaited him in Cairo would change the course of world history.